In this tutorial, we'll walk through installing a Discourse server on your own self-hosted server. Discourse is a great option for your community forum. We actually use it in Cleaver. As you can see here, this example is forum.cleaver.io, and we've been using Discourse for about a couple years or so. For a written version of this tutorial, go to cleaver.io and go to the slides section and head over to how to install a Discourse forum. There are some prerequisites that you want to consider. If you scroll down a little bit, we'll see some server specs right here. Choose a beefier server to run the Discourse forum. It's all going to go into a Docker container, and it takes more of a beefy server to really handle Discourse well. And when you're setting up a new server via Cleaver, make sure that you set the plain server connection. What you don't really want is Nginx to be installed, since that's going to conflict with Discourse's configuration. And the other thing that you want to have before really going into Cleaver to set up your server is choose an SMTP provider. I'm going to use Mailgun in this example. If you go down to step 3 right here, there's some information that you're going to need on hand to enter during the setup phase. It's best to have these items set up before you really go in and install Discourse on your server. Mainly you want your domain set up with the DNS pointing to the server that you're going to host your Discourse on, as well as you want your SMTP information readily available. The first step, let's provision a new server. I'm going to select Hetzner, and then for the server region, I'm going to choose Oregon, and let's make this a little bit beefier. The default for the US is 2 CPUs, 2 gigabytes memory. That's pretty good enough, actually. But let's make it just a little bit more beefy. We're going to choose the second option there. And again, the main thing that we want to do is for server type, instead of having app server as the selected installation, let's do plain server. So this is going to set up a server, but it's going to do the very minimum setup that doesn't even include Nginx. And let's call this Discourse server. All right, let's provision. Our server finished provisioning. Next thing to do is click into it and then go to the SSH keys section. What you want to do in here is add your SSH key to the server. That way we can log into the server via SSH and run some commands via terminal in order to install Discourse. So I already have my key set up here, and now I'm going to open up my terminal and SSH into it. Okay, I've SSH into my terminal, and from here we're going to run a couple commands and start the process for installing Discourse. First thing that we're going to do is we want to make a new directory. And we're going to have that in the var section and then title it Discourse. And now we're going to clone from the Git repo. And I'm going to paste in the command to do that here. You can take a look at this. Again, this information is in the written tutorial. And now I'm going to run that. And now let's cd into var and Discourse. And in this directory, if we want to take a look at the contents, we'll see that we cloned it, and within this there's a setup executable. So we're going to go ahead and run that and go through the setup process. And just as a reminder, before you really get into this, remember to configure your DNS settings and point it to the server, as well as have all your SMTP credential information handy, because we'll just want to enter that in as we go through the setup process. Otherwise, it might be a little bit of a pain to go back and forth while trying to configure everything during the initial setup. And now we'll run the setup process. And the first question is, what's your host name? Again, we want this to be preset. It's going to do a verification after this. So I've named my DNS for this discourse.cleaver.live. And you can see it's checking the domain name. It's going to do a verification. It looks like it's successful. All right, and now it's going to ask me for an email address for the admin account. I'll just do, I don't know, fake@email.com. Okay, and then from this point on, it's going to ask for SMTP server information for the configuration. I'm not going to show this part of the setup, and we'll just skip past it and we'll see the result coming up. And Discourse just finished the installation process. After you enter your SMTP information, it takes another 5 to 10 minutes or so for the setup process to be completely finished. And now that the installation appears to be complete, let's go check real quick and see if it is done. I should expect to see discourse.cleaver.live render. Let's give that a try, and huzzah! Okay, we have it. So from here, all you need to do is just go through their Webflow process to complete installation and complete setup. And there you go. That's how you can set up Discourse on your server.